Today I'm so excited to catch up with my friend Kate Wallace. I met Kate 7 years ago through the KP Fellows program for ambitious entrepreneurial students, and of the 100 people in our cohort, Kate's life story was by far the most memorable to me. She spent her teenage years as a fashion model, then quit, decided she wanted to work in the tech industry, went on to study design at Parsons, work at Peloton in product, and is now building a company that brings AI to kids and raised $12 million for it. Kate is incredibly bold, driven, and thoughtful, and just a wonderful human being. And I'm so excited to chat with her today about modeling, how she met her husband, what it's like to work with her husband, as well as her entrepreneurship journey from starting an NFT collection during the crypto boom that made $2 million to her personal philosophy and journey building a product that users really love. I'm so glad we get to catch up.
I'm really excited too.
You've just had such an exciting and interesting life, and I would love to just start from the beginning. I know you got into modeling as a teenager, I think after getting mono.
Yeah, that's true. Man, that really takes me back. I was living in Toronto and I was 13, and my friend's girlfriend was a model and she introduced me to her agent. And then I signed up with them right away. And then it led to a really crazy 5-year journey of like working while also going to school. But like I was barely going to school because, you'd go to set or you go to castings. And then I got meningitis when I was 16. And because of that, I got like really thin because I was in the hospital and really sick. And then I got out of the hospital and my modeling career took off because I looked gaunt and not had like that aesthetic that they liked. But I think for me, that was also such a wake up call where I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm in this world where I got out of the hospital and everybody's like, oh, you look fabulous. I'm like, no, I really don't. I don't look good at all. I think that was when I first started thinking about, okay, is this really what I want to do? I graduated high school and went full time for about a year. And then in that year, decided that I wanted to go to university and pursue like a more traditional career and made the switch.
So I guess up until 16, modeling was your dream and you were all in on it.
Yeah, for sure. Looking back, especially for us, I think being born in the 90s and stuff, like our role models were like Victoria's Secret models and like Britney Spears and my brothers had like athletes or like entrepreneurs. And I think you just grow up being like, oh, this is what success looks like for a woman. So I thought that that's what I should do. And then all of a sudden I was in it and I was like, oh, I don't feel like I'm reaching my full potential. I don't feel very respected in this role. I feel like this isn't for me. But it was a really hard change because I think it was funny. I remember looking at my dad saying, oh shit, can I give this up? Because like this is what I do. My dad was like, Kate, you're 19, you can retire and do something else. I was like, okay, I can reinvent myself here and do something different. So I'm really happy that I made that decision. But up until that point, I really thought that I was just going to focus on modeling and fashion.
That's so crazy. I'm curious, beyond the glamour of it, what did you like and dislike about modeling?
Yeah, I think the parts that I liked were the independence it gave me from such a young age. My parents had full-time jobs. They said, okay, if you want to do this, you need to get yourself to castings. You need to travel
Mm.
by yourself. You need to negotiate your own contracts. And I just went ahead and did all of that. So I think that that was a really great experience for me. My parents have this funny story where it got back to them that the modeling agency thought that I was an orphan because I kept saying my parents couldn't come in to sign the papers. They thought there's just no way this kid has parents, but it was just my parents were so busy and wanted me to, if I wanted to do it, just to pursue it myself. So that was a really good experience. The part that I didn't like though is at least back then, I just felt like you're not super respected in that role. Like I just remember being on set and they'd be like, get the girl, where's the girl? And it's like, I'm a
Mm.
person. My name is Kate and I'm here to do a job. And I think that that wears on you for sure.
Was it mostly men who were like doing this or just everyone?
Definitely a lot of men. I think in the higher up roles, even in fashion, it was a lot of men. But I think the women too, like it was sexism, but it was also just being young. And I think it was the idea of like what it meant to be a model. I did some acting too when I was a kid, and I actually remember that being very different because
Mm.
there's a union and there's rules. And if you're a kid, you need to have a teacher with you and you need to do a certain number of hours of schooling. Whereas with modeling, it was just there's the Wild West. There's no protections. So I think that that also adds to the culture of it.
Were a lot of your friends models, or did you have friends at school and like did they think it was cool that you were modeling?
People at school definitely thought it was unique. I had a lot of friends who were models. I think that those were sort of my closer friends through those years. At one point, I went to a school that was for kids that did professional things outside of school. So it was a lot of Olympic athletes. Drake went there back in the day. A lot of people are from Degrassi. So there I sort of fit in because everybody was doing something odd in their spare time. And then the school was really set up to let you do more independent studies, that if you needed to go away to shoot something for a few months, you could come back and it would be fine.
That's so crazy. Do you think
Yeah.
it was like a confidence boosting thing for you to be in that environment where you were so independent and working?
I think it was at first, like learning how to take the subway to get to a casting and do it myself was a confidence boost. But then I think it wasn't as I got older because I think the pressure became so much. And then, it definitely caused some body image issues and stuff where just your idea of like what is like a healthy weight and things completely start to devolve because you're just surrounded by a totally different view of that. And that's also when I was like, this is not good. I was in Singapore for a couple of months and, they're doing weigh-ins every day. Like you just,
Oh
you're
my God.
up to the office, you get on the scale, they measure you, and then they're like, can you lose 5 pounds by next week? And that's
Oh God.
yeah, it's just so crazy. But I was so used to it by that point. I just thought it was normal. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, why am I living like this? Like I really don't have to. And then my parents gave me good advice. They said, don't put university off for too long. If you want to do something else, like this would be a good time to just go to college. And then that's what I did. And it was the best decision for sure.
How did that mentality shift sort of happen?
I came back from Singapore and it was like a get in shape, go on the next trip sort of thing. And I was just like not up to it and decided at first just to take some time off. And then I decided to just move to Montreal, like completely on a whim. Like I think I decided on a Friday and I moved on like a Tuesday.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody there. I moved in with like people from Facebook, which it was a rent. It was just complete strangers. And then I started working at a cafe as a barista, but I didn't speak French. So I was the worst barista ever. Like people would say, give me a chocolate mocha, and I would give them like a chocolate cookie because all I understood was chocolate. So that didn't last super long. And then I met a girl there in a clothing shop. We just started chatting and have been best friends ever since. Like she was like the maid of honor at my wedding.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was I don't know. I think the universe just brought us together. But she was like, you really need to stop working at this cafe. And got me an internship at a fashion magazine. And then it was there that I started seeing all the work the developers were doing. I was like, oh, tech is really interesting. And I'm much more passionate about this than I am about what the editorial team is doing. So then that was how I decided I wanted to do technology. It felt really good to have a different direction in a totally different area and feel like I got sort of like a fresh start from that.
That's awesome. You went to school for design.
Yeah, I did design and technology at Parsons. I wanted to do app design, and it was a really great program. I learned about a lot of different technologies and learned some light coding, not enough to be an engineer, but enough to understand how technology worked, and then really focus on app design so that I could go into product design after graduation.
How did you go into product design?
That's a funny story. So I had like one goal after college, which was to get a visa. I really wanted to stay in the US because there's just a lot more tech jobs there. So in my senior year, I applied for a job at Better Mortgage. I don't know if you've heard of it. It was like the CEO that fired 1,000 people on Zoom in the pandemic. It went really viral for that. It was that company.
That's such a great
Yeah.
tagline.
Yeah. It's so funny because you say Better Mortgage and nobody's heard of it until you mention that story. And then everybody's like, oh, that company. So I got this advice from somebody in a program called the Next Canada program, where he said the best thing you can do for your career is to find a company that's going to be a rocket ship. And the way to like find a company that's going to be a rocket ship is find a CEO who's done it before, that's raised from good investors, that's a Series B company, that's in a big market, and just try to get a job there because you're going to learn so much about building a startup. And if the company moves quickly, like so will your career. So I just like had all this criteria and I put it on Angel List, and then I had my list of companies. And then it was like this one guy, Vishal Garg, who's the CEO of Better Mortgage, fit all of that criteria. So I was like, okay, I have to get a job here. And I also need to do it before I graduate because I need them to be willing to sponsor me so that I could stay after. So I applied to the job. I put on my resume that I'd already graduated so that I could get the interview. And then I went in for the interview. And I basically just did the whole interview pretending I could work full time. Because I was like, if they like me and then they make me an offer, then I can be like, actually, sorry, I am still a student, but here's why I did this. And I really want to work here. Like, hopefully it just impresses them that I wanted to work there so badly that I would be willing to lie and just like get the job. And just to go back to the modeling, like that's the kind of like stuff that I think I learned from like a young age, which is just how to like hustle. And the recruiter was like, okay, because he really liked me. He thought I was a good fit. And like, how many kids are like dying to work for like a mortgage company? So it's sort of interesting that I was like dying for a job there. But then he called the CEO in, and the CEO came in and he started like yelling at me. He was like, why would I hire a student? Like, you're not
Oh
going to
my
be
God.
committed to my company. Like, what are you like, why are you wasting our time? And I I was like, I just need to find a way to convince this guy that it is worth it.
While he was yelling, did it occur to you at all that maybe you don't want to work for this person? Or did it make you feel like, no, like this guy is going to make it?
Yeah, it definitely made me feel like this guy's going to make it and I want to be a part of
Okay.
this rocket. I probably also should have been assigned for what I was getting into, which was like a really crazy couple of years. I just thought he's really passionate and he had brought a company public prior and I just really wanted to work there. And I was like, I can deal with
Wow.
like a crazy boss.
That's amazing.
And then, yeah, so I had worked in India a couple of years before in Gurgaon, this like really small town outside of Delhi, as a part of a grant. And I knew that they had a back office there, and Vishal is Indian as well. And then as soon as I said that, he immediately changed his tune. He was like, okay, this is super interesting. And I just made it really clear that I wanted to work there. And then he was like, okay, you can do an internship, with the condition being that I would stay after as a full-time hire.
So when there was a pause in his yelling, you just like calmly brought up that you had lived in this small town in India.
Yeah, I think I just blurted it out. It was just like such a weird thing to say. He was like, really? And then it just the whole conversation shifted. Yeah,
I love that you did that.
thank you. I mean, yeah, I was really lucky and life-changing. About 6 months in, a new product manager started. He had been working in India, and then they brought him back to the US. And we got off to a horrible start because he came and was like, these are the features we're building. And I was like, I don't think these are motivated by user needs. And then everything worked out super well because the product manager was Blake, and now we're married and have worked together.
No way.
At our
That's
wedding, our
hilarious.
manager at the time went to my mom. It was like, it's so funny. The first day they worked together, I had to have a one-on-one with both of them because they hated each other.
Tell me then about working with Blake.
The two of us were going to be like a pair on this project. He got there and had his roadmap and was like, okay, this is what you're going to design. And then, I mean, this is how he tells the story. I don't think that this is exactly what happened, but he said that I brought him into an office and wrote 10 things on the whiteboard that I thought he was doing wrong. And he was like, who is this designer who just showed up here and is telling me how to do my job? And I was like, who is this guy who just got back from India and like thinks he knows exactly what we should build, whereas like I've been like talking to the underwriters in here for the last 6 months. So yeah, it was definitely a rocky start. But then I just worked really well in the end. Like we actually did work super well together and it made work way more fun. And then we quickly became friends. So we were hanging out outside of work. And then we started talking about starting our own company together. And then one thing led to another. And then we were dating and have just been together ever since.
In that first disagreement, do you think it was a symptom of an underlying philosophical difference that you guys have, or like a difference in approach, or was it truly just like a sort of miscommunication?
Oh my gosh, we were both just like so young and inexperienced. The thing that I learned at Better was how to listen to users. Like it was so important to go and understand what the underwriters were going through and what their pain points were and trying to address those pain points. And I think it's really interesting when you have sort of like a product philosophy and a direction you want to take it, and then also have to match that with what the user needs are.
Right.
And I think that that's where this sort of the tension was. Like we were trying on the one hand to automate the underwriting process so that we could hire less underwriters, but at the same time we had a whole team of underwriters who were using the software. So I think that that was always at odds with each other. It's like, how do you automate a job and also support the job at the same time? But I think we came up with this philosophy. We called it make it so that they're like Batman. Like, how do you give them the tools to be a superhero so that they could be more efficient at their jobs instead of just focusing on like completely automating it, because that was where the tension was.
That makes sense. Yeah, take me through the journey of working with Blake to start a company.
Oh yeah. So we were at Better working together on underwriting software, and then Blake left the company and I took over his job. So that's how I became a product manager. It was just, I was the person who knew the most about underwriting and they really needed somebody in that position. And I realized I really love product management. I really like data and working with engineers as well as UX and UI. But after that, Blake interviewed at Peloton when he was looking for a new job. And at the time at Peloton, product managers did all UX and product management. They only had UI designers.
Oh, wow.
And then Blake hates doing UX. So he was like, this is not a good fit for me. But he was like, I know somebody who is, and referred me. So then I interviewed at Peloton and took that job. And then maybe 3 weeks into it, they opened a traditional product manager role that was a lot more sort of data driven and analytical. And then they were like, oh, Blake would be a great fit for this. Kate, are you still interested? And I said, I was like, oh, yes, I am. And then I had to tell my manager that we were dating. And my manager was like, I don't care. We'll just hire him anyways. So then a few weeks later, Blake started at Peloton. And our manager just managed the two of us. Like, he would give us projects and be like, I'll just let you guys figure out who's going to do this.
That's so amazing and special. I'm super impressed that you guys have stayed together both romantically and professionally through multiple jobs. And I'm so curious, how do you do it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at Peloton, we were on the same team, but as product managers, you don't really work directly with other product managers. So at Peloton, it was really easy and it's really nice actually to work with your partner. Like, you spend so much of your day at work and you want to spend your life with your partner. So it makes sense to just get to spend that time together. And I think it's something that we're like really committed to, is just always working together. In the pandemic, it was really hard for us because we worked in different rooms and we actually saw each other way less. Everybody else just felt like they were in the opposite boat where they're spending so much more time together. But for us, like, our desks weren't next to each other anymore. So it just felt very weird. So during Peloton, Blake bought a Bored Ape, like the NFTs that took off just for fun. It was when they first were released. I think it was like $200. So like not expensive yet. Yeah. And he started posting on Twitter as if he was the Bored Ape. Just again for fun. Like, he's really creative and studied creative writing in college and just wanted to do something fun. I mean, Peloton was so crazy during the pandemic. I think we're both just like really burnt out and wanted to do sort of like fun side project. And then the Bored Ape got really famous on Twitter and led us to dropping our own NFT project. And it went I mean, it was 2021 at this point, so I think the market was going crazy, but it like sold out in less than 6 minutes and we made like $2 million.
Oh my God.
It was funny, actually. He was in a hotel room like doing the drop and I was late, as I always am. And I was like going over to console him because I thought like there's just no way that this is going to sell out. And then by the time I got there, it had sold out. So I actually missed.
That's so insane.
Yeah, it was horrible too. Like, the website crashed. It was him and our other co-founder Ethan working on trying to fix the website so that it didn't crash, and people started minting from the contract. Like, it was just chaos for like 6 minutes.
Oh my God.
And then it was over.
That's really impressive. How did you market it? Was it through Blake's Bored Ape Twitter account?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And then there's some other stuff, like it was our first time ever trying to market something. So we had advisors come on who were popular in the space and gave them like a small amount of equity to promote it. It was like podcasts, it was Twitter. At that time, there's just such a community around Bored Apes that we were able to just get a lot of support. And that was the start of the company. So it was called the Writer's Room, and it was a pass where you could come in and create stories and characters. And from there, we raised our seed round led by A16Z and quit our jobs and started the company.
I'm really curious what you learned about marketing and hype coding.
On the marketing side of things, building a community is a really great way to get started. If you have people that are following you and care about what you're doing, you have a community to launch a product into. That was something that we definitely had at that time. Also, just coming from the Peloton pandemic wave and then the NFT wave, through all of that, we realized if you have a market that's going crazy, like you can just catch the wave. So when you see like mania, like get in it.
I do want to say though, I feel like I saw a lot of people try to get in on the crypto mania, but I do have a certain other class of friends who tend to like overthink, overanalyze before acting, and none of them made a lot of money. And I feel like there's something about your personality of being such a go-getter and like hard committing that is probably especially conducive to like properly taking advantage of a hype wave that's emerging very quickly and that you have to act on quickly.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. Credit really goes to Blake on so much of that. I think also it was like the first thing we did where we were like, oh, we're just doing this for fun. Like the three of us, like,
Yeah.
Blake and Ethan, had tried to start so many random side projects in the past. Like we had like fitness stuff, we had habit tracking, we had sugar-free gummy bears, we had non-alcoholic wine, and it turned out like we were just making grape juice. We tried to do so many random things trying to start a business, but it was when Blake was like, you know what, I just need to do something fun because I'm so burnt out, that it actually just caught. So I think that there's probably a lesson there too. It's just when you're happy with what you're doing, like the rest sort of follows.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're like naturally excited about it, you're probably just going to see things that others don't.
Yeah, yeah. He was posting stories on Twitter as if he was this monkey about other people's NFT characters. And he was just having so much fun doing it. And I think it just resonated with people.
Take us through the rest of the journey.
We're building a desktop experience where you could log in with your NFTs and sort of co-create stories together. At first, we were just focused on all the things that weren't working and trying to fix them. And then we had this moment where we were like, oh, what we need to do is look at what is working and double down on that. Like there were some people that kept coming back that really liked these like writing competitions. So they were creating characters and creating stories about their characters. So we sort of took that insight and said, okay, let's just really focus on this. And again, sort of asked ourselves, like, what would we be the happiest working on? So we took that insight of people like doing characters and stories and said, okay, let's do like a mobile app. And we really started off doing text adventure games. We had some people who were like spending 20 hours a week building these text adventure games, which was really great engagement. But we saw that the market wasn't going to be big enough to like build this kind of venture we wanted to. But the thing that was happening was any of the stories on that people were making for kids were really sticky. Like those were the people who kept coming to read the stories. And we had parents reaching out to us being like, I would pay for more content because like my kid keeps asking for more Robo adventures. Or like, hey, can I get a t-shirt for this? Because like my kid really wants Captain Crumbs on his shirt. Okay, so now this feels like a more scalable market, and it makes so much sense that kids are the people that are interested in this type of experience. So we said, okay, let's just really focus on the kids use case.
Can you give like a 30-second summary of what the platform is today?
On the Avenue app, you can play a story from our library or you can create your own. It's all powered by AI, so you can do a prompt and it will generate a whole story for you. Your prompt can be, I went to space on a rocket ship and defeated Captain Crumbs with lightsabers, or you can also just write in like tomato and it actually creates like a pretty great story that way too, because of the work we've done on the back end. And I think the thing that people, especially kids, really like is that you can create a character that will be featured in that story. So I could create a character that looks like me and name it Kate and create a story, and Kate will be in the story and consistent across all the imagery. Or if you're a parent doing a bedtime story and you don't want to think of a story, you can just choose one from our library and play that.
That just made me remember how often I kept asking my parents for new stories, and they were probably sick of making up so many.
Yeah, that's what we hear from parents too. They say every night my kid wants me to come up with a story and I have no more ideas. Or the kid will be like, Dad, I want a story about unicorns that play hockey. And it's just like really hard to think of the unicorns that play hockey story. But of course, with AI, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, that's fascinating because when we were growing up, it was like everyone reads like Dr. Seuss, or everyone sort of reads the same like big children's books. But I could see a future where every kid has their own unique story and no two kids are reading about the same characters. Which future do you think we're headed toward?
I think what will be really interesting is kids getting to put themselves into popular stories. So like if I could go into the future version of Pokemon and be Kate in that story. It's like the Pokemon that's consistent, or the Star Wars that's consistent, but you get to be the character in the story. I think that that's what resonates so much with people, is they sort of fall in love with the characters and they want to keep coming back to read the next Robo Adventures because they get to be featured in it. It makes it so much more exciting. Kids especially just really love seeing themselves as a part of the content.
That makes a lot of sense. That kind of mirrors, I think, what we've been seeing with like character AI, like chatbots also, is people are creating AI characters based on existing franchises and having their own personal conversations with these existing characters.
Yeah, exactly. It's really like an extension of these existing franchises.
I also want to hear more about what you said about user research. I feel like doing user research for a consumer feels different because in like B2B or fintech, the customer will tell you directly what they want. Whereas in consumer, it's harder for consumers to necessarily articulate what they want. And it's maybe harder to even trust them. Like there's a bit more intuition going on. What's it been like understanding users for the consumer product for kids?
I think consumer is definitely different, but at Peloton, where I was previous to Avenue, we were also working on consumer. And if you have a product that somebody is already using and that is working for them, they can give feedback on it, which is probably also how it feels in B2B. It's like, okay, like we're solving problem X, they're using it for X. Now they're asking us for Y. But I took a lot of what I thought worked at Peloton and tried to apply it to a startup, and it actually didn't work at all. If you're trying to find product market fit, I think user research can be really tough because they're going to tell you what they think they want, but it's not based on what they actually want because they're not using it yet. And I think we spent a year building an early version of our product that was, we were following all the steps that we had learned at Peloton. Like we would launch a small version, we would do user interview calls with people, we would record them, we'd summarize the data, we'd look at the responses, we'd prioritize a feature, then we build another thing. And we just like kept doing that. And we ended up with this Frankenstein product where it didn't really have a real use case because we had tried to just like take everybody's feedback and build based off of that. What we've learned since is that having a really clear problem is helpful. So for us, kids want to create stories where they can be the hero. And our metrics would be, okay, are they creating stories? Are they coming back to read the stories? And just staying laser focused on that and then letting the data inform more of the decisions we make, I think has been more effective. And I will talk to users and get their feedback. But I think the best feedback is if somebody stops using it, asking them why, because they'll get to the heart of the issue. Like a good one is, oh, my daughter loves this product, but I have to read her the stories because she's not old enough to read. And then I went on a golf trip and then, we didn't use the product for a week. Or, we came back and I didn't have the time to read her the stories. I had to make dinner. And it's like, okay, those are real reasons. And then we got to the point where audio narration is really important because then the kid can use it by themselves. But the trap we fell into before was we would just ask, what else would you like to see? And then they'll give you feature ideas, but it might not actually be what they need.
When you work with Blake, how do you guys divide responsibilities, especially given, I guess you guys seem kind of similar?
There's definitely been a lot of iterating. I think at first we tried to have super firm lines where Blake's the CEO. He does a lot of the business side and strategy, as well as things like investor relations or external relations. And then I was really focused on building the product. And I think what we learned from that, and it goes against traditional advice, because people always say, try to have clear lines with your co-founders. But it's better for us if we understand what each other are working on and have an open dialogue because we respect each other's opinion a lot and make better decisions. And the moment I realized this was, I had like our roadmap for the next few weeks. I had it all thought out. I was like, this is why we're doing this. This is the list of projects. And he just made this point. He was like, well, our drop off is super high at the beginning of the app. Like this is the number one thing we need to be working on. We're just losing so many people up front. And I was so frustrated because I thought, man, I put so much work into this roadmap. And I was like, damn, he's right. He's 100% right. Like just having his like separate opinion was really helpful. So I think one thing we've learned is just to like take a second to really listen to each other and know that if things get too intense, we'll be like, okay, we're on the same team here. Like we want the same thing. So that helps with those discussions for sure. The other thing that's funny is like being product managers, we always have metrics for success. So it's like, what are our metrics for success for working together? And it used to be that we were trying to reduce any number of disagreements, which is really hard because then you start agreeing even if you don't agree. And then we realized actually our metric for success is time to recover. So how quickly can we be like, hey, this is too intense, move back, and then just be good? And if we're able to do that really quickly, then you can move through the day and be effective and also give each other feedback, which I think makes for a better product and company.
I love that. Do you feel like that bleeds into your relationship too, like over personal disagreements?
I think so. I think for us, it all just blurs. At one point, we were trying to have stricter work-life balance where like we didn't talk about work over dinner or we don't text about work. We only do it on Slack. But it just was so painful and just we love our jobs. So it's what we want to talk about and what we want to do. So it's also sort of letting go of that pressure and just being like, okay, this is the season of life we're in right now, which is we work all the time and we love it and that's cool.
Makes sense. I feel like when I was working with a couple, I felt like one advantage that I had over them was that I could complain about my disagreements with them to my boyfriend, who was just like a neutral third party. And I'm curious, do you have a best friend who you rant to, or are you just really good at dealing with your disagreements?
A good point. I think it's just each other. We have Ethan, who's our third co-founder, who's amazing and such a level-headed person. I think that also really helps because it's sort of like a third voice. I just really appreciate his energy and calm disposition. It really makes everything good. I'm sure you were that person for your previous co-founder. So.
One last question. Do you ever miss fashion or modeling?
Oh my gosh, I think it's such a long gone era of my life. Like when you asked about it, I just thought, wow, I haven't thought about this in so many years. It's funny when you're a kid, like whatever you're doing feels like it'll be your life forever. And then as you get older, you've got these different chapters and the previous chapters like matter so much less. Like I think today it's really just about living in Toronto, spending time with my family and growing this company, which really takes up all my brain energy and my golden doodle.
I didn't know you had a dog.
Yeah, we actually got him the first week of the pandemic because we thought, oh, we're going to be at home for 6 weeks and it was a good time to get a puppy. And then now we're like, oh, we can never go back to an office because he's so used to having us home all the time.
That's so cute. I also love that you guys were one of the first movers. Like the first week that pandemic hits, you just like go and adopt the dog.
Yeah, we saw him on Instagram and just pulled the trigger so quickly. And then, yeah, it was the best decision though. That I think also helps with the work-life balance. Like you have to walk the dog and, snuggle the dog. So it gets you to take a break.
I will have to stalk your Instagram for photos of him. Thank you so much. It was so fun catching up with you. You always have such amazing stories, and I'm so happy for you and Blake.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.